Hello. In this video, I would like to go over how to create multiple UV sets and use multiple textures on a single object. Now, the first question may be, why would you want to do this? Well, the simple answer is efficiency. If we kind of think of this object I have in my viewport as a brick wall with four sides, simple brick wall, but still a brick wall. If I wanted to create a texture for this that goes all the way around and it's different in every spot, I would have to create a fairly large texture. By using multiple UV sets and multiple textures, I could blend two textures on top of each other, which will allow me to use, say, a repeating or tileable texture for one UV set, and like a dirt or a grunge texture for another UV set. And this will let me get unique detail across my brick wall with a fairly large amount of detail that's not going to be too low resolution. So first, I just have my brick wall. I haven't done anything to the UVs yet. I still have, if we go to my object here, I still have Lambert 1 applied to that. So let's go ahead and apply a different material to this object. So I'm just going to right click on my object and go down to Assign New Material. And just for the sake of giving us a little bit of specularity here, instead of a blend, or instead of a Lambert, I'm going to use a blend. So I'll apply a blend to that. Then let's look at our UVs. So if I go to Edit UVs, UV Texture Editor, what I have is, obviously I just created this from a cube. So what I have here are UVs that were basically automatically generated whenever I created the cube. So let me change the UVs a little bit here. So the first thing I want to do before I ever edit my UVs, I want to delete my history and freeze my transformations. So I will go to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and then Modify, Freeze Transformations. And basically what that does is it zeroes all of my translations out. So there's no more history in here. So my UVs are kind of fresh to be edited. So to kind of rearrange my UVs here, I'm just going to go to Create UVs, Automatic Map. I'll just do a simple automatic map. I'm leaving everything at its default. Nothing here is going to be changed. I'm just leaving it as it is for now. So to create an additional UV set, I'm going to go to Create UVs, UV Set Editor. Make sure I have my object selected in object mode. And in my UV set editor, you'll see map 1. Now this is our basic default UV set. So I'm going to go ahead and click New. And that will create a new UV set that's just called UV set. And if I click on that, it'll switch to a blank UV set editor. So there's no UVs applied to this object in this UV set yet. So the first thing I want to do is just rename this for the sake of consistency. So instead of calling this a UV set 1, I'm going to rename this to map 2. So now I have map 1 and map 2. So if I go in and go to map 2 and do the same thing I did before, go to Create UVs, Automatic Mapping, And just so we could see a difference here, what I'm going to do is right click and go to UVs and select all of my UVs here and just rotate them a little bit, kind of move them around some. So now if I go to my UV texture editor and I go to UV sets, you'll see that you have two. I have map 2, which is currently active, and then map 1. So if I switch between those, you'll see that now we have two different UV sets. So how do we apply two different textures to these? The first thing we need to do is create a layered texture, something we can plug two different textures into. So I'm going to close my UV set editor out. I don't really need that anymore unless I want to create another UV set. And I'm going to go to my blend. So I'll just right click my brick wall and go to material attributes. One more time, material attributes, there we go, blend. And I'll just go ahead and name this to brick wall matte. So I want to apply a layered texture to my color. So I'm going to click on this little checker box here to bring up my create render nodes. And we will go to 2D textures. Is that right? 2D textures. See if we can find this. The easy way to find this, if you can't, is just to come up to the top here and start typing in what you're looking for. So I type in LA and you see that layered texture automatically comes up. So I'm going to apply a layered texture to this, to the color. Now by default, it throws this little green textured node in here. And we probably want to jump over to our hypershade to see what this is actually looking like. So to get to our hypershade, I'm going to go to display, or I'm sorry, window, rendering editors, hypershade. So we have our brick wall matte here. And I'm going to click that guy and click this button right here, which is input and output connections. So basically what that's going to do is graph our material, and we can zoom out just like we can in our viewport here and move things around. So let's go ahead and look at how we can apply textures to this layered texture material. So I'll click on my layered texture here, and just to start, I'm going to go ahead and click on I just click to create a new, actually I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is create a file node. I'm actually going to create two file nodes. So I'll come up to my little search bar here and type file, or FI, and then I get file node, and I'll just go ahead and create two. And with these guys, they are both going to get a place 2D texture node. And once I connect these things up and use, assign them to their unique UV patterns or UV sets, I will get another node, and I'll explain what that is too. But for now, what I'm going to do is just go to my layered texture here, and I'm going to middle mouse drag my file 1 and my file 2 over to this layered texture area. And then I can get rid of that little green color there, and that's basically going to turn my object or my material black. So the simplest way to kind of start connecting up multiple materials here is just selecting your file node. Then I go over to where it says image name, And I'm going to navigate to my desktop where I have a couple textures already laid out. So I have a brick pattern that is tileable, so it repeats. And I'll just start with that one now. So I have that one applied to my layered texture. So we can see that file 1 there is applied to my layered texture. And if I just minimize my hypershade and I go over to my viewport and I want to look at my shaded mode, so I just hit 6 on my keyboard so I can see this in its shaded mode. So it doesn't look very high detailed or really what I want at the moment. My bricks aren't the right orientation. So let's jump over to my UV texture editor and edit my UVs a little bit. So by default, everything gets applied to your UV map 1, which if I go to my UV sets, I'm currently on map 2, and that's why I can't see a texture here at the moment. If I go to map 1 and then go to textures and go to PQ Blend 1 SG, which is the name of my material, file 1, then we see a texture here. So what I can do now is I can sort of rearrange my UVs so they repeat, and this sort of low resolution texture will be repeated and start to look kind of high resolution. So the first thing I'm going to do before I start rearranging my UVs is just click on this little button right here, and that's going to darken my my image a little bit in my UV texture editor, just so I can see my UVs a little bit better. So let's go ahead and grab all of our UVs. I'm going to rotate them. And I'm going to scale them way up so we can start to see a little more detail in our object. So now, just using a fairly small resolution texture, we've repeated it, so we've given our wall a fairly high amount of resolution. Now the problem with this is that we can clearly see it repeating. You know, this is kind of becoming a pattern, and we see bricks repeat. So it's not very realistic in terms of how the detail is laid out. It's nice because it repeats and it's continuous, and it gives us a high resolution by using a very small texture, but it doesn't really give us a ton of detail like we would want. So that's where using multiple UV sets and multiple textures comes in handy. Now I can apply a very low resolution dirt or grunge texture to this and make it look like every brick is sort of unique and has its own unique detail. So that's what I'm going to do with file 2 in my hypershade. So I have file 2 here that's also applied to my UV texture editor. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go to image name and look for my other image, which is concrete leaking. So it's a very long image texture. It's going to look kind of squished in my UV texture editor, but that's okay. I'll click open. And at the moment, we're not going to see a difference in our object because our file 1 is on top of our file 2. So if I click and drag, or if I middle click and drag my file 1 behind my file 2, then we see the other texture. So now my file 2 is on top of my file 1, so that's what we see. Now I can blend this on top of my file 1, so we can see this detail below the detail in file 1, or above on top of the detail in file 1. So I'm going to select my file 2 here. I'm going to go to blending mode, and I'm going to select multiply. So now we can see all that detail being sort of blended on top of the other brick wall. Now the problem here is it still repeats, and it's still using our UV set 1 or our map 1. So we want to kind of apply that to the other UV set. So we can edit those UVs individually and make them look like some unique detail is going on there. So to achieve that, we're going to go to our Window Relationship Editors, UV Linking, UV Centric. Now if I right click, go to Object Mode, and click on my object, what we're going to see is our object shape, which this is our brick wall, excuse me, and then this is our material, so brick wall matte, and then we have all of our files that are associated with that material, so file 1 and file 2. Now our object itself has 2 UV maps, and we see those here. We see map 1 and map 2. So if I click on map 1, the other files that are associated with map 1 will be highlighted. So I'll click on map 1 and we see that those are highlighted. So I want my file 1 to be associated with map 1, but not file 2. I want file 2 to be associated with map 2. So I'm going to click on file 2 to unlink it from map 1. Which it won't let me do that, so I'll kind of do that in the reverse. I'll click on map 2 and link file 2 to map 2. So then you see our UVs automatically kind of snap and change there. So going back to map 1 is connected to file 1, and map 2 is connected to file 2. So I can close that for now. Now I can go back to my UV texture editor, zoom in here, and we can look at our UV set 1. So we have those UVs that are the brick wall being repeated. And then I can switch to map 2, and our texture isn't showing up, so I can go to textures here and select file 2, and that will show me the texture that's being associated with that object. So now basically what I want to do is rearrange my wall or my UV shells here so they fit that grunt texture properly. So I'll go to UVs, move, I'll just do one shell at a time here. And move those guys out of the way. Scale this guy way up. Because remember, my texture here is really squished in my UV texture editor. So I want to try and compensate for that by squishing my brick wall a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I was just kind of playing around with a new feature there to see if it worked the way I thought it would. So then I can grab my next UV shell here and move that over. Kind of just scale that up. And sort of fit that where I want it to have a little bit of a unique area. And I'm just overlapping them right on top of each other at the moment. Now, if I wanted to do this in conjunction with, say, a occlusion map, ambient occlusion map, I could do another UV set and just for the ambient occlusion map, and then I could do that, throw that into my layered texture as well, and then I would have some ambient occlusion in my scene. Now, I do realize that this one is upside down, so I'm just going to flip that guy over. And then I will bring this guy over as well. So now I have an object, a brick wall, that's using a repeating tileable texture and a non-repeating tileable or a non-repeating texture. And using them in combination makes every single pixel on my texture unique. So even though we see it repeating, even though we can go back and look at, say, this brick compared to this brick, before where they were exactly the same, now they have unique details, and they're each slightly different because that other texture is sort of layered on top of it. So that is how to use multiple UV sets and multiple textures on one object to create some high resolution unique detail with very low resolution textures.